Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody, I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead and do a little bit of look ahead on college hoops. It's kind of a weird Monday in college sports in general. Most college football teams are done with their regular seasons. Obviously, we have championship weekend ahead, so some teams are still playing. A lot of teams are done. Kind of that weird week where portal rumors start to leak, coordinator news, head coaching news. So college football is busy. College basketball, we're, of course, coming off Feast Week just a few days ago. But also, I'll say this, we got some really good games in college basketball in the coming days. We have UConn Baylor later in the week. We got Auburn Duke later in the week. We got Carolina hosting Bama later in the week. Those games are all Wednesday. What I do want to do, though, is take a second and look at a game that I am very intrigued by on Tuesday night in Clemson, South Carolina, as the University of Kentucky 7-0. How about this? Ranked number 4 in the country in the new AP poll. They are going on the road for the first game of the Mark Pope era on the road as a true official road game. And how about this? FanDuel just put out a point spread for this game. Kentucky just a 1.5 point favorite at Clemson. The over-under set at 155.5. So let's go ahead and dive into this game. You know, it's actually been a quiet couple weeks for Kentucky following that Champions Classic win over Duke. Now, I think a lot of that is remnants of the scheduling of the previous coaching regime. Bottom line, we know the old guy didn't love to do the MTEs, the multi-team events, the Mauis, the Battle for Atlantises. One of the first things that Mark Pope said when he took the job at that opening press conference, oh, we're going back to Maui and we're doing it soon. So we'll see if Kentucky gets in Maui next year or the year after or whatever. But really, since that Duke game, pretty quiet. Even during Feast Week when everybody else is playing, Kentucky had 2 home games, took care of business against Western Kentucky, and then on Friday took care of business against who am I blanking? Why am I blanking? They took Georgia State. I apologize. Don't know why. How could you forget those Panthers from Georgia State? Okay. But the bottom line remains is that Kentucky is now 7-0, first time since 2016, 2017. Look, I don't think there's a ton to take away from those 2 games that they just played, but the counter can be true as well. To their credit, they looked the part. I know Western Kentucky was a little bit sloppy, but they bounced back with a nice win against Georgia State. And again, I think through 7 games, you have to be thrilled with what you've seen for the first 7 games of the Mark Pope era if you're a Kentucky fan, because they're doing it offensively. But here's the other part that I don't think Mark Pope and his staff are getting enough credit for early on. They're doing it defensively as well, and that's where I want to focus on things from the Kentucky perspective. Do you know that right now, Kentucky, on the defensive side of the ball, and again, remember, they're playing a fast tempo. They're shooting a lot of threes. That leads to a lot of fast breaks for the other team. Guess what Kentucky's defensive stats are? And I know they haven't played the best teams in college basketball, but check this out. Top 30 field goal percentage defense. Pretty good. By the way, top 10 3-point defense. Yeah, that's very good. And top 10 in blocks as well. So for a team that is known for its offensive prowess, for a team that is known for putting the ball in the basket, when you are top 10 in 3-point defense, top 10 in blocks, it means you're not giving up points in the paint. It means you're not giving up points from behind the arc. You're a top 30 field goal percentage defense. You, again, have to be thrilled if you're a Kentucky fan. And I understand there are bigger challenges coming up, starting with Gonzaga this weekend, but you got to be happy. When I say bigger challenges, I mean after Clemson. Clemson, of course, on Tuesday, Gonzaga on Saturday. But it doesn't change the fact that you got to be thrilled with the defense. And then obviously, look, the offense speaks for itself, okay? Through 7 games, Kentucky has put up 100-plus points in 4 of those 7 games. In the Friday win over Georgia State, Kentucky has 7 different players go for double figures. And here's the crazy part. The crazy part of it all is that really, if you're looking at that result, it's not that surprising if you've watched Kentucky, because on the season, they have 6 different players who are averaging double figures on the season. So it's not like you scored 100 points and 7 guys scored in double figures and it's some crazy aberration. No, that's kind of who they've been early in the season, especially against inferior opponents. and you look at this team, the amount of scoring, but also the number of guys that can beat you on any given night. Listen, you can just go back to that Duke game a few weeks ago where Andrew Carr was the star early. Lamont Butler made some plays. Otega Owe made some plays. There are so many guys that can beat you. Obviously, so far this season, the big standout to me from the offensive side of things, Otega Owe. I said it before the Duke game. I said it after the Duke game, and I'll say it again. Otega Owe, I did not know was this good. I watch a lot of college basketball. I did not realize he was this good. And by the way, I think that's part of the reason he transferred. He felt like he wasn't being used properly at Oklahoma. But to quote the old Shaq meme, Otega Owe, I was not familiar with your game, as he is averaging 16 points, 42% shooting from three. And this kid has been phenomenal among many players who has been phenomenal. From the Clemson side of things, listen, Clemson's kind of an interesting team, right? For people who forget, by the way, don't forget this part. Clemson is coming off, how about this? An Elite Eight appearance from a year ago. That's easy to forget. Remember, they were in the West region in Los Angeles. I went to the press conference. I didn't go to the games, but they beat Arizona in the Sweet 16 in Los Angeles. It was a very pro Arizona crowd. And then they played Alabama really tough in the Elite Eight. They end up falling. Alabama goes to the Final Four. But Clemson right now, coming off that Elite Eight, they're sitting at 7-1 overall. Listen, kind of an interesting team. Their only loss was on the road to a very good Boise State team. Boise State made the tournament last year. They've made the tournament several years in a row. The game was in Boise for some reason that I totally can't figure out. I mean, I didn't look too much into it, but why is Clemson go to Boise to play a regular season game? I don't know. I don't get it. Whatever. Other than that, they get the win. I think the most notable win for Clemson so far, probably a victory in their MTE, their multi-team event last week against Penn State. They took care of business against what was an undefeated Penn State team. They win by 8 in that game. And if you're not familiar with Clemson, this is what you really need to know. One, just kind of an interesting team. First of all, Chase Hunter is their best player, guard, really talented. He was a key part of last year's Elite Eight run. He is a 6th-year senior for the Clemson Tigers. So my man is enjoying his college experience, but has played all 6 years for the Clemson Tigers, taking advantage of that COVID year, but he's averaging 16 points per game this season, 47% shooting from 3 through 8 games. We'll see if he can keep that up. And oh, by the way, outside of him, what is also interesting about Clemson, first off, as a team, they shoot really well, 39%. I think that stat's a little bit misleading. In the loss to Boise, they shot just 6 of 25 from 3. And then they actually have a pretty big lineup overall with, among others, 6'10 Chauncey Wiggins, 6'11 Victor Latkin, who transferred in from Cincinnati, and 6'8 Ian Sheffield, who, of course, was with the team last year, was a contributor last year on that Elite Eight team, and he has only gotten better this year. Here's the thing, though. As I look ahead to this game, a couple things stand out. Now, first of all, the 1.5-point spread from FanDuel tells me FanDuel and the sports betting websites and apps and sports books and whatever, they want you to take Clemson, right? Because Kentucky, ranked number 4 in the country, they're only a 1.5-point favorite. This is their first road game. I always worry about backing a team in their first true road environment. I don't know that I'm as worried about Kentucky in this game. First of all, when you look at Kentucky, first of all, just a veteran team, right? This is not the typical any team in college basketball that has never played big road games before. We've talked about all these players. Otega Owe came from the Big 12, played in a lot of tough environments. Kirk Kriisa played in the Big 12 and the Pac-12, played in a lot of tough environments, at least the Big 12. Pac-12, maybe not so much. Lamont Butler's played in a lot of big games. You just go on and on down the list. They are a veteran team. They're used to these big moments and big environments, even if they haven't done it together. And all you need to do is look back at that Duke game. In crunch time, in winning time, it was Kentucky who was poised, Kentucky who made plays. And I don't think it's going to change on Tuesday night at Clemson. Beyond that, and I think this is where it's important, I'll also just say this. I think it's just a bad matchup for Clemson and a good matchup for Kentucky. The bottom line is, listen, how are you going to beat Kentucky this year? A couple things come to mind. One, you got to slow the tempo. Clemson could do that. But 2, you got to be able to defend the 3. Do you know that right now, Clemson is 192nd in the country in 3-point defense? And it's not like they've played the best schedule so far. I mean, again, look at their schedule. I know they played Penn State. I know they played Boise State. They also played Charleston Southern, St. Francis of PA, Eastern Kentucky, Radford, San Francisco, and Florida A&M. It's no disrespect to any of those schools, but if you're 192nd in three-point defense after playing those teams, call me dubious that I think you'll be able to get it done against Kentucky. And so there's that element of it. Here's the other thing, too. For a team that's as big as Clemson is, they're not a great rebounding team, okay? They only rank, as far as rebound, a rebound percentage, which is kind of the percentage of rebounds they get, they're about top 50. Kentucky, for comparison, is in the top 30 nationally. So if you're only, again, look at the competition. If you're only in the top 50 based on who you've played, now you're going up against the biggest, most physical, most athletic team that you've seen so far this season. They got a lot of size, but they're not a great rebounding team. I mentioned Victor Latkin. He's 6'11", 7 feet. He's averaging 6 boards per game, 5.5 boards per game, really, which is like a shockingly low number for a guy his size. That number is actually down. 2 years ago at Cincinnati, he averaged 7 a game. It's down to 5. So I just don't think this is a great matchup for Clemson. And so, yes, Kentucky is going to face challenges. Like I said, they have this game. Then they have to go to Seattle to play Gonzaga this weekend. That one's going to be a war. Louisville, all of a sudden, is not a very easy game. They come to Rupp Arena in a few weeks. And even Ohio State in Madison Square Garden for the CBS Sports Classic is not going to be an easy game either. But this is a game that, bottom line, end of story, I just don't think it's a place where, based on the matchup, Kentucky is going to lose. Give me like a 74-66 Kentucky win. I think the defense will be good for Clemson. I don't know that they can keep up offensively. By the way, if you're not comfortable betting Kentucky, the 1.5 point spread indicates that Clemson, which plays a slower tempo, will be able to dictate things. Well, if that's the case, just take the under, because it's going to be a slow tempo. Clemson's decent defensively. Kentucky is elite defensively as well. That's the other thing I didn't even talk about, by the way, as far as this matchup is concerned, is that, Clemson doesn't have a lot of guys that can create their own offense. So now you're going up against a top 30 field goal percentage defense, a top 10 3-point defense. I like Kentucky. I think I said 74-66. That is your official AT pick and prediction on Clemson and Kentucky. Do me a quick favor. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, do me a quick favor again. Click subscribe. Make sure to also subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod. We'll be back with a full live show Tuesday afternoon. We'll talk about whatever ends up happening in the world of college sports in general. And then we will start looking ahead to some of those Wednesday games because, as I said, UConn-Baylor, must-win game for UConn. North Carolina versus Alabama. North Carolina coming off 2 losses in Maui. Alabama coming off a loss to Oregon on Saturday night. Auburn versus Duke. Number 2 team in the country going to Duke. Long story short, make sure you're subscribed. A lot of college hoops content, and we will be back. Full episode Tuesday after.